I stood frozen, my breath fogging the glass of my 28th floor office window in Seattle's tech district. Rain streaked the panes like tears, blurring the Space Needle's glow in the distance. My phone buzzed on the desk behind me, its screen lighting up with a single email that shattered everything I'd built. Expect our lawyer's call. No greeting, no explanation. Just 6 words from my mother, Evelyn Harper, CC'd to my brother Lucas. The betrayal wasn't just a knife in my back, it was a blade I'd forged myself, handed to them in trust. I'm Olivia Harper, the founder of Nexus Wave, a startup that clawed its way from a $50,000 0-cents loan to a $200 0-cents million valuation in 6 years. My blood, my blueprints, my 2 a.m. energy drinks fueled its rise. I was 24 when I sketched the first algorithm on a greasy diner napkin, 26 when I pitched to VCs in a borrowed blazer, and 30 when Forbes called me Tech's next titan. But tonight, at 32, I was staring at the end of my own story. Or so they thought. The email hit at 9:47 p.m., an hour after the office emptied. I'd stayed late, tweaking a pitch for a new AI module, the kind that could have pushed us into unicorn territory. My desk was a mess, half-empty coffee cups, a dog-eared copy of the Lean Startup, and my father's engraved watch, its ticking a faint pulse in the silence. I wore it every day since he died 3 years ago, a reminder of the man who taught me to build, not break. Now his widow, my mother, and his son, my brother, were tearing it all down. I read the email again, my eyes burning. Expect our lawyer's call. No Olivia, no honey, just a corporate guillotine. Lucas, my younger brother, was CC'd, his name a silent taunt. He'd always known their plans first, slinking into boardrooms I wasn't invited to, his slick smile charming investors while I coded in the trenches. Evelyn had joined Nexus Wave after Dad's heart attack, promising to bring structure. I'd let her in, thinking she meant support. She meant control. Lucas followed, fresh from an MBA-appointed CFO without my vote. I'd swallowed it, telling myself family meant sacrifice. Now, their silence screamed louder than any argument. My fingers hovered over the reply button, but I stopped. What could I say? Why? How could you? They didn't deserve my questions. I turned to the window, Seattle's skyline smudged by rain. The city had been my crucible, its coffee shops and co-working spaces the backdrop to my grind. I'd built Nexus Wave here, not just a company, but a dream. AI that could predict market shifts with uncanny precision. We'd disrupted finance, retail, even healthcare. But dreams don't survive family. The first danger came an hour later as I left the office. My car, a beat-up Tesla I'd bought secondhand, was parked in the garage across the street. I was halfway to it when the brakes screeched in my mind, not the cars, but the memory of this morning. I'd swerved to avoid a truck on I-5, the pedal sluggish, unresponsive for a split second. I'd chalked it up to wear and tear, but now, with Evelyn's email burning in my pocket, doubt crept in. I knelt by the driver's side, rain soaking my coat, and checked the brake line. A clean slice, barely noticeable, glistened under my phone's flashlight. Someone had tampered with it. My pulse hammered. This wasn't just a corporate coup. They wanted me gone, permanently. I didn't call a tow. I didn't call the cops. I walked 10 blocks to a 24-hour diner, my hood up, rain masking the shake in my hands. The neon sign buzzed open, and I slid into a booth, ordering black coffee I wouldn't drink. My mind raced. Who cut the line? Evelyn with her icy precision? Lucas with his frat boy bravado? Or someone they'd hired, a shadow paid to erase me? I pulled out my phone, opened a secure app, and checked the encrypted folder where I'd stashed a deal I hadn't planned to use. Not yet. 3 months ago, I'd met a private equity firm, Callahan & Associates, in a nondescript Portland office. They'd offered to buy my 51% stake, a controlling interest I'd clung to through every funding round. I didn't need the money. $75 million 0 cents was more than I'd ever dreamed. But I needed an exit. Evelyn and Lucas had been chipping away at me, sidelining me in meetings, signing deals without my input, leaking stories to TechCrunch that painted me as visionary but erratic. I'd drafted the sale, but held off, hoping family could mean more than power. Tonight, that hope died. I opened the digital agreement, my signature the only thing missing. My thumb hovered over the sign button, but I hesitated. Selling meant freedom, but it also meant surrender. They'd win, rewriting history to make me a footnote in my own company. I thought of Dad, his watch heavy on my wrist. "Build, don't break," he'd said. But what do you do when your builders betray you? The diner's jukebox kicked on, Springsteen's Born to Run filling the air. I almost laughed. Running wasn't my style. I fought. I'd fought for every line of code, every investor, every milestone. But this fight was different. It wasn't just about Nexus Wave, it was about me. I signed the agreement, my name steady despite the coffee trembling in my grip. I sent it to Callahan, then powered off my phone. No going back. The second danger hit as I left the diner at 1 a.m. The street was empty, rain pooling in potholes. I was 3 blocks from a bus stop when headlights flared behind me, too close, too fast. A black SUV roared past, clipping my shoulder and sending me sprawling into a puddle. Pain shot through my arm, but I rolled to my feet, heart pounding. The SUV didn't stop, its taillights vanishing into the mist. Accident? No. A warning. They knew I was still here. Still a threat. And I took the bus to Tacoma, my loft a sanctuary I'd bought with my first big payout. The brick exterior, exposed beams, and creaky windows were mine, earned without Evelyn's approval or Lucas's charm. I locked the deadbolt, checked the security system, and sank onto the couch. My shoulder throbbed, but the ache in my chest was worse. I pulled Dad's watch from my wrist, tracing the engraving, "To Olivia, keep time." He'd given it to me the day we filed Nexus Wave's first patent, his pride brighter than any IPO. Sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led here. Evelyn's structure had been a chokehold. Board votes I wasn't invited to, budgets I didn't see. Lucas's CFO role was a coronation, his frat house grin masking a hunger for control. He'd thrown lavish team-building retreats in Vegas, charging them to the company while I worked weekends. I'd let it slide thinking family meant loyalty. I was wrong. At 3 a.m. I opened my laptop, pulling up Nexus Wave's internal servers. I still had founder access, unless they'd locked me out. My credentials worked, and I downloaded everything: financials, emails, board minutes. I didn't know what I'd find, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. One email caught my eye, from Evelyn to Lucas, sent 2 weeks ago. "Keep her in the dark. She doesn't need the stress." My jaw tightened. Stress. They were planning my execution. The third danger came at dawn. I'd dozed off on the couch, laptop still open, when a sharp hiss woke me. The air smelled wrong, metallic. I stumbled to the kitchen, my head spinning, and found the gas line behind the stove leaking. I shut it off, threw open the windows, and gulped fresh air. The line wasn't old. It was sliced, just like my brakes. Someone had been here, in my home. I checked the security footage, a glitch at 2:15, AYEM, 10 minutes of static. They were covering their tracks. I didn't stay. I grabbed my laptop, Dad's watch, and a duffel bag, then drove to a motel outside Olympia. Cash only, no ID. The room smelled like stale cigarettes, but it was safe. For now. I spread my files across the bed, piecing together their plan, Evelyn and Lucas had siphoned $3,100,000 0 cents through shell companies, labeled as consulting fees. They'd set up an offshore account in the Bahamas ready to flee if the sale went through. They didn't expect me to sell first. The fourth danger struck that afternoon. I'd gone to a coffee shop to use their Wi-Fi, my motel too risky for unsecured connections. I was emailing Callahan when a man in a hoodie sat at the next table, too close. He didn't order, just stared at his phone, or at me. My skin prickled. I packed up, but as I reached my car, he followed, his pace quickening. I sprinted, diving into the driver's seat and peeling out. In the rear view, he stood motionless, watching me go. A hired tail or worse. I drove aimlessly, my hands shaking. Seattle's tech scene was cutthroat, but this was personal. Evelyn and Lucas weren't just stealing my company, they were erasing me. I thought of the media hits they'd orchestrated, TechCrunch calling me burned out, Wired hinting at creative differences. They'd built a narrative to justify my exit, and I'd been too busy coding to notice. The fifth danger came that night back at the motel. I'd rigged the door with a chair, but at 11 p.m. it rattled. Not a knock, a slow, deliberate push. I grabbed a lamp, my only weapon, and held my breath. The lock clicked, but the chair held. Footsteps retreated, heavy and unhurried. I didn't sleep again, my mind racing with questions. Who was behind the door? How far would they go? And why now, when I'd already sold? By morning, I was done running. I drove to Portland, to Callahan's office, a brick building off a quiet street. Miss Callahan greeted me, her silver-streaked hair sharp against her black suit. "You look like hell," she said, not unkindly. I managed a grim smile. "Feels like it." We sat in a windowless room, safe from prying eyes. She slid a folder across the table. Finalized terms, $75 million 0 cents, NDAs tighter than Fort Knox. "They'll call it a blindsiding," she warned. I nodded. They've been blindsiding me for years. I signed the final papers, my name a declaration of war. Callahan leaned back. "Your mother and brother will lose their minds." I thought of Evelyn's clipped voice, Lucas's smug grin. "Good," I said. I left with a copy of the agreement and a weight lifted but not gone. The dangers weren't over. Rake lines, gas leaks, SUVs, stalkers, intruders. They'd tried to break me before I could break free. They'd failed. Back in Tacoma, I stood in my loft, the city's lights flickering through the rain. My phone buzzed. 72 missed calls. Evelyn's name flashing most. I didn't answer. I opened the wooden box where I kept Dad's watch. It's ticking steady. Inside was a USB drive, taped with his handwriting, in case they forget who built this. I plugged it in, my heart racing. What secrets did it hold? Why had Evelyn moved so fast, and who was still hunting me? I wasn't done fighting. They'd taken my company, but they wouldn't take my truth. Seattle's skyline glittered, a challenge I'd meet head-on. This was my city, my story, and I'd write the next chapter, whether they liked it or not. Rain hadn't stopped in Tacoma, a relentless drumbeat against my loft's windows as I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor. Dad's USB drive glowing faintly in my laptop's port. It was 2 a.m., and the city's lights flickered like a heartbeat through the storm. My phone, face down on the coffee table, buzzed again, Evelyn's name lighting up the screen for the 73rd time. I ignored it. The USB held secrets I'd only glimpsed, spreadsheets, emails, a scanned letter from Dad warning that I was Nexus Wave's soul. But there was more, buried in encrypted folders I couldn't yet crack. What had he known? And why was Evelyn so desperate to bury it? I'm Olivia Harper, and 24 hours ago I sold my 51% stake in the company I built from a diner napkin sketch to a $200 0 cents million empire. My mother, Evelyn, and brother Lucas thought they could erase me with a lawyer's call, but I'd struck first, signing away my control to Callahan and Associates for $75 million, 0 cents. They didn't expect me to fight back or to survive the brake lines cut on my Tesla, the gas leak in my loft, the SUV that clipped me, the stalker in the coffee shop, or the intruder at my motel door. But I was still here, and the USB in my hand was my next weapon. I rubbed my eyes, the screen's glow burning into my retinas. The unencrypted files were damning enough. $3,100,000, 0 cents siphoned through shell companies, labeled as consulting retainers. Evelyn's emails to Lucas were clinical, ruthless, keep Olivia in the dark. But the locked folders taunted me, their passwords a riddle I couldn't solve. I tried Dad's birthday, our first patent date, even Nexus Wave. Nothing worked. My fingers hovered over the keyboard when a sharp pop outside snapped me upright. Not thunder, something closer, like glass breaking. I killed the laptop screen and crept to the window, heart hammering. The alley below was dark, rain pooling in ruts, but a shadow moved near the dumpster. A figure in a hooded jacket, head tilted up toward my loft. My breath caught. They weren't just watching, they were waiting. I backed away, grabbing my duffel bag and Dad's watch, its weight grounding me. I couldn't stay here. Not with Evelyn and Lucas escalating from betrayal to something deadlier. The first crisis hit as I slipped out the fire escape, rain soaking my hoodie. Halfway down the metal stairs, a step gave way, bolts snapping like gunfire. I grabbed the railing, my feet dangling 3 stories above concrete. Pain seared my bruised shoulder from the SUV hit, but I hauled myself up, gasping. Sabotage again. Someone knew my routes, my safe places. I hit the ground running, ducking into a side street as headlights flared behind me. No time to look back. I caught a late bus to Seattle, hunching in the back seat, my laptop clutched like a lifeline. The city's neon blurred through the rain-streaked windows, a reminder of the battleground I'd built. Nexus Wave wasn't just a company. It was my proof that a nobody from Tacoma could outsmart Wall Street's giants. Now, Evelyn and Lucas were dismantling it, not for profit but for power. I opened my laptop, using the bus's shaky Wi-Fi to email Callahan. They're moving $3.10 M offshore. Freeze their accounts. Her reply was instant. Done. Forensics team deployed. Stay safe. Safe? I wasn't sure I knew what that meant anymore. At 4 a.m. I checked into a dive bar turned hostel near Pike Place Market, paying cash for a bunk. The clerk didn't blink at my soaked clothes or wild eyes. I lay in the dark, listening to the snores of strangers, my mind racing. Dad's letter on the USB haunted me. Olivia holds this together. He'd seen this coming. Evelyn's hunger, Lucas's greed, but why encrypt the rest? What was he protecting me from? The second crisis struck at dawn. I'd slipped out for coffee, needing caffeine to crack the USB's code, when my phone pinged with a news alert. Nexus Wave founder Olivia Harper exits amid burnout rumors. My blood ran cold. The article splashed across Business Insider was a masterclass in spin. Harper, once hailed as a visionary, stepped down due to leadership fatigue, paving the way for CFO Lucas Harper's bold new era. Anonymous sources. Evelyn fingerprints painted me as a flake, a dreamer who'd crumbled under pressure. I gripped my coffee so hard the lid popped off. They weren't just stealing my company, they were rewriting my life. I ducked into an alley, rain masking my ragged breaths. The article wasn't just PR, it was a signal. Evelyn and Lucas knew I'd sold my stake, and they were covering their tracks, framing me as the failure before I could expose their fraud. I opened my laptop, drafting an open letter. When family betrays you in boardrooms, you don't hide, you rebuild with receipts. I hesitated. Finger over send. This would go viral, burn every bridge and paint a target on my back, but silence wasn't an option. I hit send, and the internet exploded. By noon, Silent Founders trended on X, my letters shared thousands of times. Journalists DM'd me, investors emailed support, and former employees posted stories of my late-night coding sessions, my open-door policy. But the backlash was fierce. Evelyn's allies flooded comment sections. Ungrateful daughter, bitter quitter. Lucas tweeted a cryptic jab. Some people choose chaos over legacy. I didn't respond. I had bigger fights. The third crisis hit that afternoon. I'd moved to a co-working space in Capitol Hill, using their secure Wi-Fi to dig into the USB. I'd cracked one folder, financials _2019, revealing Evelyn's first shell company, Cascade Ventures, funneling $500,000, 0 cents, to a Bahamas account. I was screenshotting it when the fire alarm blared, lights flashing red, everyone evacuated. But as I reached the stairwell, a hand grabbed my arm, a man in a maintenance uniform, his grip too tight. "You dropped this," he said, shoving a blank USB drive at me. His eyes were hard, not a janitor's. I yanked free, bolting down the stairs, my laptop bouncing in my bag. Outside, no smoke, no fire, just a drill, or a I didn't stop moving, weaving through Seattle's crowds to a library branch near the waterfront. My hands shook as I opened the USB again. The man's face burned in my mind. Hired muscle, not a coincidence. Evelyn and Lucas were closing in, their $3,100,000, 0 cents grab, a desperate last play. I found another file, an email from Evelyn to a Bahamas advisor, sent hours after my sale. Transition strategy, discreet execution. She'd planned to liquidate Nexus Wave's assets, flee with the cash, and leave me to take the fall. My stomach churned. This wasn't just betrayal, it was annihilation. The fourth crisis came at dusk. I'd emailed Callahan the Bahamas evidence, urging a full audit. She replied, "Legal team recommends you as transition witness, stay visible." Visible? I was a hunted animal. I left the library, heading for a ferry to Bainbridge Island, needing distance. On the dock, a woman in a trench coat bumped into me, her hand brushing my jacket. I felt a sting, like a needle, and dizziness hit fast. Poison? I stumbled onto the ferry, collapsing in a seat, my vision blurring. A passenger noticed, calling for help. A medic checked me. Low blood sugar, they said, but I knew better. I'd been dosed, a warning shot that missed its mark. I stayed awake through sheer will, the ferry's hum grounding me. On Bainbridge, I rented a cabin with cash, its cedar walls a fragile shield. I opened the USB's final folder, cracking the password, hold fast, Dad's old sailing term. Inside was a video, time-stamped a month before his death. He looked gaunt, his voice steady but urgent. "Olivia, if you're watching this, they've turned on you. Evelyn's been skimming for years. Lucas is her pawn. The board's complicit. Protect yourself. The founder's ledger is your proof." The ledger was there, too. 18 years of transactions. Every cent Evelyn stole. Every vote Lucas rigged. I saved it to 3 cloud drives, my hands trembling. Dad had known. He'd died knowing. The fifth crisis erupted at midnight. My burner phone rang, an unknown number. I answered, and Evelyn's voice cut through. "Olivia, stop this. You're tearing us apart." No apology, just a plea laced with venom. "You tried to kill me," I said, my voice ice. Silence, then a click. Minutes later, my cabin's lights flickered, and a low hum outside grew louder. Drones, their red eyes circling in the dark. I grabbed my laptop and duffel, slipping out the back as a window shattered. I ran through the woods, branches clawing my face, the drone's buzz fading behind me. I hid in a ditch, rain soaking me, until dawn. By morning, I was back in Seattle, meeting Callahan at her Portland office, Her team had frozen Nexus Waves accounts, catching Evelyn and Lucas's $3,100,000 0 cents transfer mid-flight. "They're unraveling," Callahan said, sliding me a board meeting invite. "Be there, end this." I nodded, Dad's watch ticking on my wrist. The meeting was tomorrow, Nexus Waves HQ, 30th floor. I'd face them, not as a daughter or sister, but as the founder they couldn't erase. The boardroom was a glass cage, Seattle's skyline a mute witness. Evelyn sat rigid, her nails tapping the mahogany table, her tailwind cornered. Lucas slouched, his smirk gone, eyes darting to the buyer's legal team. They didn't waste time, projecting slides of wire transfers, shell companies, Evelyn's Bahamas email. The room went still, the buzz of ceiling lights louder than any gasp. I stood, my voice steady. I stayed quiet because I believed in family. I was wrong, the board voted unanimously. Evelyn and Lucas suspended, their bonuses frozen, an audit launched. Evelyn slammed the table, her voice cracking. "This is our legacy." I met her eyes. "You burned it." Lucas grabbed her wrist, not affection but control, stopping her from imploding further. The buyer dropped the final blow, an email from Evelyn sent hours after my sale, wiring instructions to Bermuda. Every board member turned to her, and for once, she had no spin. I walked out, Puget Sound's salt air clearing my lungs. My phone buzzed. Callahan's legal team. Internal emails leaked. Evelyn coached the board to vote you out. I didn't smile. I felt no triumph, only clarity. They'd feared me not for leaving, but for thriving without them. Dad's words echoed. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. I'd learned that the hard way. Back in Tacoma, I opened my loft's safe, pulling out a photo of Dad and me, laughing after our first patent. I framed it, setting it where dawn's light would hit. The fight wasn't over. Evelyn's countersuit loomed, alleging I'd sabotaged Nexus Wave out of spite. But I wasn't running. I'd rebuild, not for revenge, but for truth.